No, nothing on Zoom here, no. Yeah, several people logged in, but nobody requesting, so.
Okay. All right, I would like to call to order the Monday, November 18th meeting of the City of Nona City Council. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Holmquist.
Here.
Alder Moore.
Here.
Alder Wood.
Here.
Alder Rademacher is excused. Alder Bernstein.
Here.
Alder DePula.
Here.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, we are going to hold approval of the minutes of the December 4th meeting for our next meeting in January. Moving on, the next item is appearances. We have several people who are registered to speak. Is there anyone here to speak on anything other than the Madison Metro decision? And if anyone, is there anyone who would like to speak or register who hasn't filled out one of these forms that are at the back of the room? If you'd like to do so, sir, the gentleman who just came in, if you'd like to speak or register.
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay, then I'm just going to start calling off names, and you can come up to the table here. Everyone will have 3 minutes to speak. First one is Consuelo Crawford.
Testing.
Very happy that I speak very quickly for my 3 minutes. I also sent this as an email to the council members as well, but just writing with an urgent concern regarding the proposed bus route on Pheasant Hill Road. While I acknowledge the importance of public transportation, I believe running a bus on a residential street, which lacks basic infrastructure and already experiences significant pedestrian and cyclist traffic, would create a truly dangerous and untenable situation. My primary concerns, we don't have any sidewalks. We lack overhead lights. I counted them for sure today. There's one by my house, one at the bottom of the hill, and that's it. Emergency vehicle access, our road is already used for emergency vehicles to come up it, which is perfectly fine. Obviously, they have to have a place to go. One of the other pieces that I was concerned about is just the increased traffic congestion. We have issues with that as it is already. People speed up and down Pheasant Hill Road as a means to avoid Monona Drive, which has never been resolved, along with the fact that we don't have overhead lights on our street as well. There are many people that are walking pre-6 o'clock and post-8 o'clock, so no matter what time of the year it is, it's never really very well lit. We also have 3 different streets that intersect with Pheasant Hill Road, which again would just add to that traffic piece. And just want to strongly urge you to reconsider maybe using a road that already has an excessive amount of traffic that's on it, or has the means for a lot of traffic. Just because, again, our road, people park on both sides of it, it's already difficult to navigate that, and I drive a Fiat. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Next, Patty Allen.
Yeah, thank you for your time. I live at 5413 Pheasant Hill Road. My biggest concern is I had 2 children that went to school at Monona Grove. The busing, even for that, on that road was hectic, sometimes scary at times. I live at the bottom of Pheasant Hill, and Stone Terrace intersects with that, also a hill. And that is just sometimes a blind spot for many, many drivers, walkers. So it's a big concern for me, along with, the traffic, the lighting. I'm hoping that you can also consider, why does it have to be twice an hour for the busing to be back and forth on Pheasant Hill? Can there be it going, one way or the other and go a different direction on its path, to circle back around? It just seems excessive for a bus to run from 6 in the morning till 8 at night, twice an hour. It's going to be a lot of traffic on that road. It already gets enough traffic. There's a new apartment building going up down on Owen Road. We're going to have congestion from that also. So please consider thinking about other alternatives than just Pheasant Hill. Thank you.
Let's see, next is Lori Oxley. Oxley?
Hi, I'm Lori Oakley, and I live on Stone Terrace. I'm a firm no for the Metro, totally. One thing I would like to say, there was no individual notice. Normally, we get letters or something when something big's going to happen. We didn't get anything, so this is the first I've heard of this. Over time, I've heard Monona Transit was good, so I don't know the purpose of Metro. Many people are home during the day. We're a very pedestrian-friendly community. We have children, families, people with their pets walking up and down the street. We have the high school students running in huge groups up and down Pheasant Hill, you know, getting their exercise. A bus is not conducive to the neighborhood. I don't know, I've lived on a bus route for a short time before, and it's not pleasant. So I guess at this point, between the biking, the jogging, the groups, people just walking down the street, and you come across them, and the people just stop in the middle of whatever. And we're all careful, and we pay attention. Buses aren't so careful. The next thing I would say, I think our taxes are high enough. Who's going to pay for this? Is Metro only going to take in the fares that they take from the people who ride the bus, or are we going to subsidize it? I can't see spending more money on things that most people won't use. I don't know a person that would ride the bus. The handicapped, the elderly, people who have their own cars aren't going to take a bus. In our neighborhood, I don't see the means. As far as the roads are already kind of a little cracked. Buses do put a lot of extra wear and tear. Those are big buses. So I'm going to assume we're going to have to make more repairs more often. Safety concerns, you know, besides the bus driving back and forth, you know, who's going to be coming through the community? You know, there's a lot of places around this country where buses bring problems. That's just a fact. I'm just concerned. I don't want a bus going by my house 2 times an hour for 14 hours a day, 28 times. I wouldn't mind it if you want to go down Monona Drive and down to Broadway. That would be fine. But I don't see the point of going through our small little road area for a bus line. Would you want a bus going by your house? Is it going to go by any of your houses? You know, I don't know. But anyways, I'm totally against it. My husband's against it. And at this point, I'd just like to say, please don't do it. Thank you.
Next is Addie Farber.
Hi, good evening. I'm back again this week. My name's Addie Ferber, 401 LaBelle Lane. I'm strongly in favor of passing this proposal to start aligning Monona's transit needs with the contract that we can negotiate with Madison Metro. By way of full disclosure, I'm a member of the Transit Committee, and I'm incredibly proud of the work that our group has been doing for the past 2 years to take input from this community, listen to people's concerns, and make adaptations to the proposed plan to make it work for Monona, and to give the benefits of expanded transit, increased availability of non-car methods to get around our town, and to meet the important guidances and recommendations that came out of both the Bike Ped plan and the DEI plan to make Monona more welcoming and more inclusive. This is a huge step forward. I'm very proud of the work that we're doing. I believe, and the evidence from other countries in the United States as well, show that buses are cleaner, buses reduce traffic on our roads, and bus drivers are specially licensed to be safe drivers, and if they're not safe drivers, they're not driving buses. So I do believe that this proposal will make Monona a more inclusive place. I think it will reduce pollution and help us move forward with our green initiatives. I think it'll be more inclusive to people coming to our community for our community events and for work. And I think it will also make our community safer by reducing single-car traffic on our roads. So thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mike Bassarich.
Good evening, Mike Basarich, 4904 McKenna Road. And I'd like to speak in respectful opposition to the Monona Transit Committee's resolution regarding Metro Transit. I want to be clear in that I totally understand all of the positive benefits that the Transit Committee has outlined in respect to affordable housing and transportation equity and budget and sustainability. But for me, there is a high bar with respect to safety that this proposal doesn't meet. We are talking about 60-foot buses, 50,000-pound buses on streets that have been identified as the most dangerous streets for pedestrians and cyclists. The University City report is literally titled "Locating Unsafe Streets for Cyclists and Pedestrians in Monona," and we are dropping a bus route right on top of them. And I think it is backwards to say that I think the council recognizes that issue, but in saying that we're going to prioritize sidewalks, like after we've placed buses on the route, goes against all transportation engineering best practices about building infrastructure first, and really is slightly detached from the reality of Monona being able to execute on sidewalks and infrastructure in the recent past. I live on McKenna Road. I saw the process that was involved in putting sidewalks on McKenna Road. So in my family and in my professional life, I don't like lobbing complaints and criticisms without a solution, and obviously I don't have a specific solution to this, but I do have an ask, and that ask is to table the voting on this resolution, as bitter a pill as that may be for some of you to swallow, given how much time and effort you've put into this. I do appreciate it. But my ask is to go on Winnequa Road, go on Pheasant Branch, but go on Winnequa Road between 7:15 and 7:45 a.m. on a school day, and stand on Winnequa Road. And if you can see your kids and grandkids going to school and also visualize Metro buses going both ways and commingling with these most vulnerable road users, and then can come back and support and endorse that reality, I'm okay with that. But I think what you will see if you stand on Winnequa Road at 7:40, you will come to a different conclusion. Thank you for your service. I do appreciate it. I would rather be here talking about all the great things that you guys do versus this.
Thank you. Next up is Grace Wenham.
I did that last time.
We've got it on the form.
Okay,
Thank you.
My name is Grace Wenham, and I am speaking to you today to reiterate my concerns specifically about the portion of the proposed bus route that runs along Winnequa Road between Nichols and Dean. I care very deeply about this issue because there are serious safety concerns in this area. Many of you have also acknowledged this. This stretch of the route is not safe for buses. This stretch of the route is not safe now. It is narrow, two-way traffic, curbside parking, no sidewalks, no protected bike lane, inadequate lighting. Like you, I believe in public transportation and believe in the importance of improved access to public transportation, but I also believe in thoroughness and doing things correctly when something as important as the safety of our children, bikers, and pedestrians is at risk. A pervasive sentiment shared at the last meeting was the amount of time, man-hours, and resources that has been on this proposal. 2 years, many of you guys mentioned it. I am a small business owner in Monona, and we recently began building a new office. It has taken my partners and I over 4 years of planning. So I can really appreciate the amount of time and resources a large project can take to get right. I believe the Transit Commission's proposal is a step in the right direction, but it is incomplete. I ask that the council members vote against the resolution in its current form and request a revised proposal from the Transit Committee that addresses the safety concerns of so many of your constituents. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up is Doug Paul.
Good evening. I've been on the Monona Transit Commission for at least 8 years, although I don't have a recollection of when I actually joined. But I know that I'm the longest standing citizen member of the current commission. Until recently, if you think of our commission like a video game, we had but one control button on the console that controlled transit, and that was the accept button. You get this budget and you get this service. We were able to make little impact from year to year. We would send out an RFP, we would get 3 back, only 1 was within budget, and we would hit accept, and the game goes on. This made mission fulfillment rather difficult. We made some great strides in ridership improvements during that time through targeted marketing, but when you calculated the maximum capacity of our service, you realized that even at 100%, we weren't operating a system with great impact. When Metro began its redesign, they came to Monona with a new proposal, and suddenly there was a joystick, an A and a B button, and a bunch of different levels to explore. Increasing ridership and thereby increasing the efficiency of the system was an option. Providing service on weekends was an option. Giving people access to participate in their own civic process was an option. Getting on a bus in Monona and stepping off an airplane in Paris is an option when you have a system that connects to the entire regional transportation system, and thereby the entire transportation network across the globe. Providing equity in our community through enhanced mobility is part of the game now. Now we can reduce traffic and the carbon footprint of the community. People without the ability or desire to drive a car can visit our community events and local businesses. Our Plan Commission can consider alternative parking requirements and transit-oriented developments. The Commission has considered the downsides, which include the presence and the sounds of the bus in the community. And we believe the benefits do outweigh the drawbacks. And I can assure you that if the new system does not perform safely or effectively, we will change it again. We have no intent on diminishing the quality of life in Monona. Our mission is to see the community of Monona in all its different shades and consider the needs of everybody to provide a system that will give everybody freedom, mobility, and opportunities for success and well-being. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Gigi Kelly.
Hi again. I think I've spoken at least 3 times on this Toniawaka Trail, and my main concern is the trail.
Do you want to?
Oh, sure.
Thanks, Gigi.
I'm on Toniawaka Trail, and I use Winnequa Road pretty much every day walking, and no matter what time I'm walking, there is traffic there. So I agree with everybody else here that it's not suited to having a Metro bus on it. And I really wanted to address another point that I briefly touched on last week, the last time I was here, and that's, you think that having buses will take cars off the road. We have school buses, and the school buses do not take cars off the road. There is so much traffic at the school in the morning and in the afternoon. So that's just one example that I see daily, that the buses do not take traffic off the road. And we have the safety concerns, and I look at every bus. I have driven the routes. I imagine the turning radius on the bus. I know they're engineered for that, but it's just going to diminish the quality of life for the people that live on the bus route. And I would be surprised if there's a lot of ridership. And I mentioned that to Nancy, and I hope I'm wrong, but I think I'm right. And so that's all I have to say. I just want to say that I'm opposed to this, as along with the community members who are, and I really hope that the council will listen to the people who are here, who make a community viable, who show up, who speak up. And I know that there's a lot of work for the people that aren't able to show up, but don't forget about the people that do show up, too. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker is Caitlin B.
Thank you for hearing me again. In addition to the reasons I've already spoken about, I want to ask the council today to vote against the transit proposal as it is written. I'm not here to speak against transit or against a contract with Metro. I do ask that you send it back to committee to produce the solutions that fully and respectfully takes into account the concerns of many Monona residents. I'm troubled that what is being presented is close to the same as what the Transit Committee generated early last fall, late summer, prior to taking in extensive feedback from the community. It's incredible how many people have showed up to speak on this issue. People that cared. I thought that's a really good thing. People really like coming out of the woodwork who aren't involved to say, hey, I really care about my town and my city. I guess I can speak for myself to say that I offered to participate more deeply in the process in the last 12, 14 months and wasn't invited to the table to do that. My offer was not received, I guess, or accepted, maybe would be the better word. I guess I felt like the committee was taken off guard last fall, not having personally understood or collectively accounted for people who were different from themselves or had different experiences or different perspectives. There seemed to have been a miss. To reinforce my concerns about the process, I just wanted to discuss like just one example of where I think it's like, are we fully collectively working together and problem solving? Do we have the full picture? What's left that we haven't explored? Are we not working on it? There's sort of this topic of like the C route and the paratransit topic. Metro can only provide paratransit within 3/4 of a mile of a route. I just want to clarify that federal dollars say they have to provide it within 3/4 of a mile of a route. They do not prohibit it from being provided beyond that amount of mileage. And we've also heard Metro talk about how it can be provided as the crow flies, as we see Belle Isle getting covered from West Broadway, portions of it. I just think that's an important point that's sort of obscured from some of the conversation at times. I think we could negotiate that further, and you might say, oh, well, other cities have already tried to negotiate that and they failed. Show me another city that's 100% enveloped by the city of Madison. Who else is doing that? We're unique, we're one of a kind. We can strike up deals that nobody else can strike up, or we can if we try. Maybe inviting more people to the table who maybe have already offered, but their offer hasn't been accepted. And I think now is the time to do this negotiation. I think we have the most leverage we will ever have. I think Metro wants us right now. Unfortunately, my confidence is low in the process going forward, based on going backwards. We've had hundreds of people show up. I think this was a real chance for a really feel-good opportunity in this community, and I still think we can get there, but I do ask the council to vote against this today, not in opposition to the whole concept, but the need to bring it back to committee and bring new people in the process for compromise. Thank you.
Okay, a couple people have also registered. Phil Mitten registered against, Scott Kelly registered against, Beth King registered against, as did Wendy Way. And then we received emails from the following people since our last meeting.
You want me to read through these, Mayor? We got one or two more, I think, after since my email, so I can just, quick
Do you want me
read
to
through
read
these.
through them, or what do you want?
Up to you. I can read them, or?
You can read through them if you want.
Okay. I apologize in advance if I have any names. So registering against through the website was Audra Cossack, David Thompson, Lori and James Oakley, Patricia Barton, Hannah Hartman, Sue Ellen Hunt, Gigi Kelly, Deborah Olson, Rex Olson, Jessica Barber, Amy Bussey, Patty Allen, Allison Newman, Jill Nyland, Paul Lebecki, Michael Basarich, hope I said that correctly, Chris Warren, and Dwight Vargas. In favor was Kai Richards, Jim Keck, Laura Hartog, Jason Chung, Chris Welly, Sue Carr, Simone and Roland DeVore, Mary Ann Reed, and then one, Bill Graff submitted just simply a question and didn't have a position one way or the other. So these were from the last 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you. There are no other appearances.
Could I make one comment?
Would you like to fill out a form?
Yeah.
And
I don't want
we will need you to fill out a form when you're done, okay?
to, Jerry Thompson, 306 Owen Road. I don't want to go back to what everyone has said, but one comment, I heard having these big buses go through Monona, when we have an efficient bus system that goes through already, I cannot see the ridership increasing. Plus, Madison Metro already goes through the outskirts of Monona. I mean, we have them on East Broadway, right by the Current. They go on Monona Drive. They stop at Belle Delay on Monona Drive. I mean, they go through without making them go through the central part of Monona when you have an efficient bus system that already works. And those bus drivers are trained also on the Monona Transit. I mean, they're qualified. That's basically, I don't want to repeat what everyone else has said, but I just hearing, we already have that bus system hitting parts of Monona without going through it. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could just fill out one of those forms at the back and bring it up here, that'd be great. Okay, I think that's everyone who wanted to speak. We'll move on to the agenda here. There is no public hearing. There is no consent agenda. Moving on to unfinished business, item 1A. Consideration of resolution 23-11-26 to be 55, is that correct, Doug? Amending the 2024 operating, no, that's a different one, I guess. Sorry. Budget to allocate American Rescue Plan funds for employee retention payments put forth by the Finance and Personnel Committee. Is there a motion to approve this?
Move to approve.
Second?
Discussion, questions? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Moore.
Aye.
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Alder DePula.
Aye.
Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 1B, consideration of resolution 23-12-2656, approving the terms of a one-year collective bargaining agreement with Wisconsin Professional Police Association Law Enforcement Employee Relations Division. Is there a motion to approve this?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Chief, did you have any, or I guess, not Chief, Leah, did you have anything to add to this?
I don't, ma'am.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Leah or Mark or Neil? Okay, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Alder DePula.
Aye.
Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
Alder Moore.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 1C, consideration of resolution 23-12-2657, approving the terms of a one-year collective bargaining agreement with International Association of Firefighters Local 311, also put forth by the Finance and Personnel Committee. Is there a motion to approve this?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Sorry.
Any questions for Leah, Mark, or Neil? We discussed all these things in detail last time. Okay, hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Alder DePula.
Aye.
Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
Alder Moore.
Aye.
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 1D, consideration of resolution 23-12-2660, authorization to contract with Accurate Appraisal for assessment services. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Questions? Rick?
So we were looking two different contracts before, and now we're looking at one. We're looking at something beyond what we have here now. This has changed from what we had before.
No, it's the same one, Alder Bernstein. It's simply, what we're doing, it's a multi-year contract. So essentially, we're looking at negotiating exactly which years would involve inspections versus just a market rate analysis. Those were the two types of assessment data that we would be contracting for.
Okay. And 4 years would take you out to 2027, is that right?
But if we go for 4 years, that's correct, sir.
Then the contract says 2028.
Okay, we will, again, negotiate, we'll make sure that's corrected, so. It simply matters about if we do 1/4 of the city at a time or 1/3 of the city at the time, I think was the difference on what we were looking at, how much we felt the contracted assessor could actually take on, so.
Okay,
And this would be doing actual inspections of homes.
Correct.
all right.
It's not that we wouldn't be reassessing the rest of the city.
Correct.
Any other questions? Doug?
So is the total amount 52.5, or is there, it's,
Let's go down and look. Let's see, where's our, I'm trying to find the actual,
page 66 has the service cost grant?
That's an annual payment, right?
Right.
52.5.
that's correct, for the years with the inspection, it would be, actually, the full cost is the 86.7. So it would have just the actual annual cost plus if we had inspections that particular year. So in any year we are going to be involving inspection, it is be 52.5 is the cost estimate. So we have the ability to either to incur that cost equally as is presented right now, or they said they would be willing to negotiate and kind of prorate those costs over the remaining years of the contract if we wished. So that would need to be negotiated still at this point.
And we're not going to do the 52.5 in 2024, is that what we said last time?
Wouldn't we do the 52.5 regardless?
Yeah, let's see if Mark has got some extra information here, so.
So we'd see it right there.
Yeah, the 52.5 is what we'll pay for 2024. That's the market value update. So we're just doing that that's the 1 year for 24. Is the 52,500.
Okay.
And then the remaining years would have the inspection cost then added.
Correct.
And if we decided to split that among 3 or 4 years, it would either be a 4-year or 5-year contract, is that
Correct.
Right.
what you're saying?
So you will bring back the negotiated contract?
Yeah, for approval, yes, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, this is simply giving us direction to prepare the contract.
Any other questions? Alder Hookus.
And maybe I missed it, and Mark, you can tell me if I missed it in here. So the annual cost for just the market update without inspection is 52.5, but then if we add inspections, it's the same price of 52.5?
It's just coincidence to same numbers. So yeah, it would be that'd be additional 52,500.
I think it's what's in the middle estimate there, the 4-year form.
So if you technically want for 2024, if we did the inspections, which we're not, it would be the 105,000. So inspections happens to be the same number as the market value. It's just coincidence.
So if you do the inspections, it's double the 52. If you don't do the inspections, it's 52.
I understand that, except in the middle one, the one that they recommended, the 4-year with inspections, in 2026, it's showing a market update of 34 to...
We're actually recommending option 3 in our...
It's option 3.
Yes.
Staff is recommending option 3, yes.
Yep, I understand that.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, the market update annual cost in the 2026, they're saying is only 34.2.
Correct.
Why would it be significantly less expensive compared to what they're offering for market update in the other years?
I'm not sure. I mean,
I believe, Mark, if you correct me if I'm wrong, again, they talk about prorating that cost again over the 4 years of the actual the
No, I
entire
think-
contract, I think is what they were doing there.
Yeah, but he's looking at the annual cost.
Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
understand that. Yeah, there's one, it's
I don't know why
it's the same cost, the annual cost is 52.5 in option 3, and it's only 34 in option 2.
That's because they're only doing one market update.
Yeah, the other ones are, the other years are maintenance.
They're spreading that cost though across the
Correct.
other years, so it.
Do you see what they mean there, Alder?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. That in their 2024, 25, and 27, they're still keeping it at the 34.2, even though those are years of just maintenance.
Yeah,
in that
they're
example.
essentially dividing out what they feel the 4-year cost is just equally over the 4 years of the contract.
Okay.
Any other questions? Do you need a roll call for this one?
I would request one, please.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Alder DePula.
Aye.
Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
Alder Moore.
Aye.
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 1E, consideration of resolution 23-12-2659, authorization to negotiate a contract with Madison Metro for bus service within Monona, put forth by the Transit Commission. Is there a motion to approve this?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Discussion, questions? Alder Moore, did you want to lead off with some?
Yeah, I just wanted to, having taken some notes from your appearances tonight, I just wanted to remark about a couple of things here. First of all, the resolution that's before us. So this is the most important part of this resolution is the now whereas let it be resolved, right? The very last piece that has 4 elements to it. And what in that resolution, and I will read it, it says, now therefore be resolved that the City Council of Monona, Dane County, Wisconsin hereby accepts the recommendation from the Monona Transit Commission and authorizes the staff to negotiate a contract with Madison Metro to provide weekday bus day service 6 to 8 on a 2-way basis, which is C3, guarantee a C3 route that loops southbound on Femrite and returns northbound. 3, provide 7-day paratransit service to qualifying individuals with disabilities. And 4, ensure the buses on existing bus routes that pass through Monona with extended hours, that being C, G, and L, open their doors within Monona at reasonable intervals. And I'm reading it because I think it's really important to distinguish where we're at and where some people I might think we're at that have spoken tonight, which is to say, I also chair the Plan Commission. So in Plan Commission terms, we have 2 kind of levels of review, if you will, right? And the first level of review is called the General Development Plan, which is more of a broad brush stroke where a developer comes in and the developer explains to us what they want to build on a particular parcel, what they're thinking about building on a particular parcel. And the Plan Commission, in the large way, in an overall way, says, yeah, we like the idea of a mixed development there, or we like the idea of a residential development there, or yes, we like the the idea of a commercial structure there, and it looks to be about the right size, shape, whatever. And the whole idea behind that GDP, among other things, is to not have the developer or the city spend a ton of time and a ton of money designing all the nitty-gritty detail around a development before they get some indication from the city that it's something it's of interest to us, right? That's the general development plan. And the GDP, after going through the Plan Commission, always comes to the City Council for approval. The second part of that is a precise implementation plan. And the precise implementation plan, the Plan Commission is drilling right down to the warmth of the lights, how many lights,
the exact stormwater, apparatus, whether it's brick or what materials and what's other elements. I mean, virtually every little detail around that development. Much as it's titled, it's a precise implementation plan. And so, and then of course the PIP comes to the city council as well. And I say that because what's in front of us tonight and what we're voting on tonight is not the PIP for transit.
Can you break your acronyms down, please?
Precise implementation plan, right, that's what I just, so it's not a PIP, it's not a precise implementation plan for transit. This is more like the GDP. We don't want to waste any more resources of the cities or of Madison Metro, because we've spent a ton of time, 2 years, looking at this, without getting approval, from the city council. And the approval is more like a GDP because it gives the framework of where we want to go with Metro, of what we think is important, the critical elements, which is, and that we know that we can afford for joining up with Madison Metro. So I totally appreciate everybody's concerns about safety. We totally, the Transit Commission, who voted unanimously on this, we totally understand people's concerns about safety. We totally understand people's concerns about pollution. I'm an environmentalist. I've been an environmentalist my whole life. That's what I do for a living. That's my day job. We totally understand the concerns about the level of traffic and a lot of the other concerns that have been raised. But writ large, after looking at this over and over and over again, we feel very strongly, which is why it was voted on unanimously, that this is the framework that is going to work best for this community. And I would add that the service that we have had has not been able to meet their contractual obligations for close to 2 years. We haven't even had the routes that we've contracted for because they've had a hard time getting drivers. Again, we feel like this is the way forward. There's been a couple other things I just wanted to reference that were referenced specifically. We have talked to Metro at least a dozen times about paratransit and the 3/4 rule, and they won't budge. We talked to them again last Wednesday about it as well. They want to budge. They think maybe 1 or 2 years from now they'll be able to budge, but they are not willing to budge. It's not because we haven't tried, and it's not because we're not good at what we do. We've talked to them over and over and over again about that, and they're not willing to budge. Second, I know, Michael, you had mentioned the university reports, and I spent more time with those reports again, although I was here when they were created, and much of the safety concerns that were in those reports, specifically around Winnequa, was about South Winnequa that we just addressed with major investments in bike lanes and sidewalks on South Winnequa. It's not to say it was that they're completely addressed, but we have addressed a lot of the things that were in the university reports that you referenced. And then I would also say, we understand that there's going to be some need for some, again, we're not at the PIP stage. We understand that there are going to need to be some infrastructure improvements to make this all work, but in fact, in our most recent conversation with Metro, which was, again, just last Wednesday, we had Metro with us for close to an hour, right, Mark? I was at the meeting. They're actually not recommending that we pour a ton of money into infrastructure before we start. Doesn't mean to say that we won't do some things, but this was a system redesign. Their entire system has been redesigned, and they're making tweaks on it all the time to improve it. Every month or two, they're making adjustments in their own resources and in their own routes for the system, the overall system redesign. So their overall recommendation to us was not to pour hundreds of, of thousands of dollars into, and see how the route works and see what the ridership looks like, because it may be, we want to make adjustments. We want to be agile enough to make adjustments. And so I just wanted people to know, it's not that we're not aware that those, and we've already started collecting data around those, but it's a work in progress. When we met with Metro on Wednesday, they're going to be working further on where the stop should be, that make the most sense, and then we're going to be talking to them again, probably not until our February meeting. But I just wanted people to understand that this is not considered a precise implementation plan. Instead, it's more like a GDP where we're looking for the thumbs up from this council to continue negotiating with transit, with Madison Metro, to move in that direction. So I just want to say, again, thank you everybody for coming. Really respect everybody's opinion. I know this is a difficult issue, challenging issue for this community, and I really, again, appreciate everything that the Transit Commission has done to get us where we are now. So with that, I will, I did want to mention one other thing, that came up at Wednesday's meeting. When number 3 on this resolution says, provide 7-day paratransit service to qualifying individuals with disabilities. I want to be clear that as a result of Wednesday's meeting, we just found out on Wednesday, when you do the 3/4 of a mile off of Monona Drive and Broadway, there's actually, for lack of a better way to put it, there's actually a donut hole at the very sort of edge of Monona by the lake, from City Hall to Toniwatha, that would not qualify for paratransit on the weekends if we don't run the bus on weekends. As it stands right now, as I said, Metro's hoping that 1 or 2 years out they can make a switch. There are donut holes like that all over. We learned from Metro on Wednesday. There's donut holes like that all over Madison. And that's how strict they're being about the 3/4 rule, because they know they have those donut holes. We discussed it. If you watch the video for the transit meeting, you'll see it. We discussed it. Having learned that information, we discussed it at transit as to whether that would change this proposal, this resolution, and decided that it shouldn't change the resolution, and instead what we will do is negotiate with Metro to get it would still bring people down to city center. And the rest of the city would be covered, but that donut hole does exist. And we don't want people that need paratransit to be without paratransit on the weekend, or make some accommodation on the weekends. But we promised, in this resolution, and we still feel strongly that not having the buses travel on the weekends is a good thing. So instead, what we would like to do is work with Metro so that when people apply for or are approved for paratransit, within that donut hole, everywhere really, but within that donut hole most especially, because they wouldn't be able to access it on the weekends, that we can make alternative accommodations for them to make sure they get to where they need to go. Because our primary thing is during the week, we want to make sure that we don't have a donut hole, because we know people that have paratransit needs need it to get to doctor's appointments, they need it to get to critical life services, etc. And so we don't want there to be a lack of coverage during the week. So I just wanted to be, in the interest of being transparent, just wanted everybody to know that, especially the council.
Any questions or comments? Doug?
Since, or after the last meeting, I did reach out to staff with some just factual questions. And I'm not sure if that was shared with the entire council or just part of it, but, so what I was interested in was how much traffic is on these streets right now. And the answer I got was it was 540 a day on Owen, 630 a day on Pheasant Hill, and 800 a day on that stretch of Winnicott. So those are all pretty modest amounts of traffic. They're not terribly small, but you know, it's not a ton of traffic. And when I look at, the other thing was these streets are all either 31 or 32 feet wide, which is, you know, basically completely standard street width. Also, the buses, the metro buses are the same width, 8.5 feet, as other large vehicles that travel through the city, like school buses and fire trucks and concrete mixer trucks and dump trucks and so forth. So I'm assuming the chassis must be the sort of standard size. Anyway, they're pretty much, they are the same width. Certainly the metro buses are longer and, you know, taller. So they do, you know, they're somewhat more massive, but in terms of the street, the width, which I think is the critical number, they are the same. So when I look at the risk, I'm looking at, thinking about the incremental risk that we would experience from having 2 more vehicles a day, an hour on these streets. And I just think it's a very minimal risk. Yes, it may not even be 2 an hour. I'm not sure how much overlap there is with what their current route is. So, although those are much smaller vehicles. I guess my point is, if you think it's safe to either walk or bike or drive on these streets now, I don't think adding 2 buses is a make or break kind of thing. But if you think they're unsafe, then you're obviously still going to think they're unsafe. But and on the 3/4 mile issue, I'm glad you addressed that with the resolution, Nancy, because I had sort of, after reading some of the emails from last week, was wondering about that. So I think, you know, we can wait and see how if this passes, how the negotiations turn out on that. But in terms of exceeding the 3/4 mile limit, my understanding, again, this makes sense, is they can't make an exception here unless they're willing to make exceptions every other community that they operate in. There are lots of people who are just outside who would like to be in. So I'd be surprised if they're going to be willing to bend on that, but, you know, we can ask.
They aren't. At this point, Doug, they're not willing to bend on it.
Right, yeah.
No, Sun Prairie offered them significant more money, and they said no, you know, to do that. And then,
Right.
yeah.
So that's, I mean, I've spoken on the merits of it before. To me, it's a no-brainer. It's more service, 7 days a week, or at least for paratransit, a more limited area perhaps that's covered on weekends. And the buses on Monona Drive and Broadway that now drive through the city and do not open their buses on the Monona side will open them. And I think the reason they don't open them now is because they're just mean. It's like if they open them, then they would have to provide paratransit within 3/4 of a mile of that route without being paid for it. So, yeah, and buses do take vehicles off the road, including school buses. I guess they bring kids to school who would otherwise have to, most of them would have to be driven if they didn't take a bus, so. That's really all I got.
I've just got a question for you. Do you remember how many cars were on the south end of Winnequa when we were talking about that? It's a day, wasn't it, like 3,000 or something?
It was 4,000 actually, I think, and the university
about 4,000.
report it said 4,000.
Yeah, it's about
Much
4,000.
busier part of Winnequa.
Right.
Right, that's because you have multiple different roads feeding into it, in particular Winnequa Trail, which is, everybody who lives on Belle Isle, that's how they get out. That adds a bunch of traffic, Maywood adds a bunch of traffic, Owen adds a bunch, so, the farther you go that way, it goes up. And whatever, south.
Any other questions?
Just wanted to clarify too, they did say that they would look at potentially budging on that rule in the future, right? But what they said too, when I discussed that with them, was that they would consider expanding it in the future, but it would be anything above the three-quarter rule, they would reserve the right to not, to cancel at any notice if there were short drivers. So anything beyond that three-quarter in the future, if it were, I don't know, something was going on downtown or whatever, and they weren't able to have enough drivers to accommodate that additional area past that three-quarter, it would be their prerogative to just not allow services that day, or not offer services that day. So it's not as reliable as what's within the three-quarter miles in the future.
Anyone else? Alderman Quist.
Yeah, do we have examples from other areas that have the donut hole example of kind of a two-tier? Sounds strange, but for example, access to paratransit 7 days a week, or 5 days a week.
Mhm.
However, when things are scaled back on the weekend, they lose access.
Middleton, they just added their Sunday route back because they weren't getting paratransit on Sundays. So because they scaled back that route on Sundays, citizens did not have access to paratransit because that route was missing. So Middleton, like 4 months ago, added that route back.
Madison said the same thing. I mean, they have different routes like ours that only run during Monday through Friday. It has the same situation. So, I mean, they didn't give us example. They talked about it. They didn't show like an actual map. We actually have the map here if you wanted to see what the weekend would look like.
I have it right up here, I can show it to him, or
Yeah.
I'm happy to hold it up, or
In our,
Mark, if you
in our
have it.
current,
I think I have it on my computer too.
our current lift access is only 5 days a week.
Correct.
And
Till 3 o'clock.
So the increase, even without the additional added route, adds additional service for three-quarters, except the donut hole or nose, depending on how you look at that little segment that isn't covered. All right.
It's under weekend.
Is it the weekend route map? Okay, hold on here. Yeah.
And I'm not sure if this question is for you, Mark, or you, Neil, and this has to do with, if we use the analogy of a general development plan and a precise implementation plan, if this resolution is focused on kind of the parameters that we're looking at.
Sorry being sideways, but it just fits better
Yeah,
on the
this
screen.
is, here you go.
We'll pause
That's-
that question.
That's sideways, but this is right side
Yep.
if you prefer to look at this.
Yep. That's the nose.
So it covers down the library and the city center. It just,
Mhm.
there's that little area pocket right there.
And people can use the paratransit, they just have to get to that area. Yes.
Yeah. It's Monday through Friday, I thought it was a little patch, but everything's covered.
Right.
Monday through Friday. There's
Monday
no like pockets at all.
Oh, not even that part of Belle Isle?
No.
Yep.
And so going back to the question of if we thought of this resolution as like the parameters to negotiate, and then eventually they'll be a little bit more precise, particularly when it comes to routes and stops and things.
Times.
Who or where is the authority for that discussion? Is that at the transit level and for any adjustments, or is that something that will return to this body for approval?
I don't know if
Probably both, isn't it?
I would
assume my view would be the Transit Commission would make the recommendation But I don't know if you guys' thought
I
process.
would think that, and then it would come back to council.
I would assume, believe the experience in Sun Prairie has been that it would be Transit Commission recommendation, but then similar to the original agreement, similar to what we would be doing here, is that agreement would come to this body.
And similar to a PIP would in a plan commission setting. The plan commission does it and then comes to here.
And I ask that because I'm not sure this body has approved current routes
No,
of Monona Transit.
correct.
And any changes over the years, like if I look at Doug, over the last 8 years, there's been shifts. There's been shifts in our current process, and that's never come to us.
Correct.
I don't think there's been any change, has there?
There's been
Oh,
some
yeah.
changes, yeah.
On Madison, on.
On Monona Transit? Sure.
Monona Transit,
In the last 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's been route changes.
No, not, it's happened before.
Was it-
I didn't think so.
Yeah.
Maybe time changes. That's what it was. We redid
Just
the
time
times.
changes, but not the actual route.
Not the actual route. That's
Yeah.
correct. It was a time change.
Yeah, I would assume because this is a contracted agreement, that it should come with a recommendation and still come before council.
Yeah, because we have to vote on all contracts, right?
But it doesn't sound like we've been doing that.
The Transit Commission has the expertise to make the recommendation. Certainly, they know a lot more about where it would be good for the stops to go and that kind of thing. They certainly would have the input on that. I mean, we can always decide when it comes back to council. I'm sure council can discuss if they want to make any changes to that recommendation. But
Yeah. He's correct.
But
Doug's
Brian's
correct. We haven't
point
made any
is-
changes to the route. We made changes to the times, and that I don't think needs to come back to the council. Just time changes we've made. But
And
yeah.
council does approve the contracts.
They do.
So assuming that whatever the final PIP, if you will, of whatever the final route is part of the contract.
That would be, unless you wrote right into the
We would
contract that
ordinarily
it could
approve
simply
that
be approved
contract.
at the transit. I mean, council could authorize that to go to just transit commission and take care of that, but I would think an issue like this, you probably would want to see it and be the final body acting on it, I would assume.
I would want that, yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't done that up to this point for
Well, so-
contracted services, for change in times, at least in the last 8 years. And I
Yeah.
believe there was a change in route prior to that,
Yeah.
where I don't believe this body voted on that.
Yes, I don't remember. I thought it was a route
We
change.
switched the routes so to go to the hospital. That, and I know that was right before I went on.
Yeah,
transit.
that's true.
That, and I was,
Yeah.
I went on that when I was first elected in 2012, and so I think it was prior to that that you were implementing it that year. Because I know it was not decided when I was on the commission.
Yeah.
But that was probably the last major change to.
Yeah, that was a change outside the Monona. Yeah, we didn't bring that here. That's correct. But we might have been part of the contract where we had to increase the hours, so that was so when the contract went out, when we signed it, we had to increase the hours for the extra time to go out to the hospital.
Okay.
That's right.
We
And
could always go back to the archives and see if the city council approved it when we were first with Madison Metro, since we were with them for a lot of years before we went with.
yeah, for sure. And I bring that up, Mark, because like hearing that Metro has made adjustments with their new rollout and continue to make tweaks, would we be anticipating then that there would be a proposed route? So if this were passed and it was here's the parameters to negotiate, and then a contract came back, would that then spell out, here's the implementation route that we're expecting in times and locations? And if so, then if there were changes to that, would we anticipate that those changes then would come to this body? Or would that be a change that would be happening at the transit authority level?
I can't imagine that it would come to this, but I mean, I can't speak for this council, but just knowing what it's like for Metro to be making changes in the system, I mean, it's taking them 3 to 6 months to make change. I mean, it's not like they're making changes every week, right? They have a whole separate body that's doing nothing but overseeing the redesign and the changes and the tweaking and resources and everything that they need to do to improve it as they go. it's hard, I mean, it just seems really cumbersome to me to think that every time something might tweak, that it would have to go back through this body. If it represented a wholesale thing of, you know, we're not gonna have certain days, or we're not gonna, or like, it's completely upended, then maybe, but like, if we're just talking about like, we think we should move a bus stop, or we think we should add a bus stop, or, you know, I can't imagine going back through this body. It just seems like it would be.
I think we just probably in the contract, you'd want to probably define
Yeah.
substantial change.
Yeah.
And you could probably do that right in the contract agreement, so it would be pretty clear. Still may be somewhat of a judgment call, depending on the extent of a change being proposed, but hopefully we could define that right in the contract. That would be, these types of changes are addressed simply at the commission level, but if it's this or higher, it would need to come through a recommendation from the commission, but then moved on as a formal contract amendment. So if it would actually require an amendment to the agreement, then I would think it would need to come to this body. But if it's within the definition of that agreement, to make whatever minor modification would be, hopefully that would be defined in the agreement.
And if something like this were to move forward, then would be what gets negotiated include a specific routes with stops and times, or would it be the general parameters and those other pieces to be followed?
Well, this is going to start the negotiation, so I assume when we come back next time, we would have the actual times, we have the actual route, and the actual stops. So we will have that once everything's negotiated.
That's what this resolution is doing. is-
Because they're going to need on their end to make sure it fits into their, contract too. So it's all going to be negotiated at the same time, the route, the stops, the times. All be negotiated at the same time with them. It will be included, some format. Yes.
But I don't know, I mean, my own view is that I don't know that we would necessarily have the times, the exact times in there.
No, we might have the exact times, but so probably those would be subject to change a little bit.
But certainly the route and the stops.
Yeah, because once we go, they're going to want to start advertising it, so we're going to have that with it. It might not be the actual times in the contract, but.
Right.
Because that would be subject to change for like 10 minutes here or 10 minutes there or something to that effect.
Sure. So, for example, like we've heard, and I would say thematically what we've heard from feedback from individuals over time has been concerns not necessarily with regional transportation, connecting with the larger kind of regional transportation, accessibility, paratransit, like all of the positive aspects, I would say, have been overwhelmingly supported, and there have been some concerns regarding that, but I would say the vast majority have been in support of that. The concerns that have, I think, distilled down are regarding the route as it relates to two segments within the route. Actually, I'll add the third segment, which is Broadway east of Monona Drive, but I'll add that here in a second as a separate piece. But those items being the pieces that I think are still of some concern, if we were to move forward with this resolution, what would be the process to continue to address those concerns as it relates to the proposed route to implement connected to what would eventually become the contract?
That's what we're talking about in the transit commission. So
I'm not clear on the question.
So how will, between now and the contract coming back to this body, how would the current concerns related to the two areas, Pheasant Hill and Winnequa, continue to be addressed while that contract's being negotiated to then come back?
maybe I'm wrong saying this, but I don't know if you bring up the map, the GNL map.
GNL is what you
I mean,
mean.
that's really, a lot of things that were based on Metro already is based on what we kind of
Yeah, we're not anticipating changing what is the C3 route
Right.
that he's going to pull up. We're not anticipating changing. We understand the concerns, but as you well know, we don't have we don't have a lot of streets in Monona with sidewalks. So there's not, and in fact, there's, a good number of people in Monona that are anti-sidewalks. So and we have spent a ton of time working on this route as opposed to the route that was originally proposed and several other alternatives, iterations along the way. So while we anticipate changing the stops we're not anticipating changing the route. The route was very intentional, the way it was chosen by the commission.
What we have here is the framework that, in the therefore be it resolved section, doesn't necessarily specify that exact route.
It doesn't, because we're still getting things like times and stops and all that kind of
Regardless of
stuff.
the times and stops.
Right.
It doesn't specify that geographical path.
Correct.
But what I'm hearing you say is that is the geographical path that we would be expecting if this were to pass.
I should take a step back. It's not official, I guess. There's one little tweak we're looking at.
Right.
So we're looking at this tweak down by, I'm just gonna stand if you can push it up. So it's right here. Let's see. They're looking to maybe go down here and up on the way back. That's something they're looking at. That's the only tweak they're really looking at.
Right.
This comes down here south, and then, so it's down here at this Dutch Mill, it has to sit for a little bit, and then it comes back. Well, we want it to go back on Broadway, so people can use it to cross the shop to the retail area. So that's the one, I think it's not officially. The rest of the stuff, it's basically agreed upon.
And it would, and if it came back on Broadway, they're looking at turning at Roselawn rather than at Monona Drive. And then going Roselawn north to Femrite, so they connect up with Femrite again. And then go out at Femrite to go back up Monona Drive from there to Owen. Because we did have concerns about not, obviously, which you know, because we talked about it, concerns about not hitting the main shopping area.
But the G line will have a stop at Broadway Mountain Drive too, so.
Right.
That's why so, it's not official, but they basically said, here's one stop of the G line would be, Broadway, Monona Drive, so they cross there too, but that's a busy intersection too, so. But yeah. So that's the one tweak we're looking at. That's not been officially yet. So yes, I guess the route's not official yet, but that's the only tweak we're looking at.
And from what we've heard in those other segments of the Pheasant Hill segment, well, the Owen Pheasant Hill segment and the Winnequa segment, is there any plan for any other additional solutions to some of those concerns that were brought up for those two segments before the contract would come back?
I would say no, because we understand those concerns, but we have limited options in the streets of Monona, and what we're trying to do with respect to the transit route that we have looked at half a dozen, 8 maybe, routes. I mean, we have tried to work a C3 route that works for all of Monona. We've tweaked it and tweaked it and tweaked it, and there's no perfect solution.
It's got to work with Metro too. I mean, they have to have some input on the
Right, and
efficiency
Metro
of the
is,
route.
we've driven the bus with Metro. We've had transit members on the bus with Metro, and Metro has driven the bus and let us know what turns work, what turns don't, what stops work, what stops don't. So we've looked at all of the options on the west side of Monona Drive, and this is, we feel like this is the route because we have looked at all the options, and this gives us the best option.
I'm concerned that the current proposal, the resolution doesn't specify this geographical path. If it's to negotiate what's listed in these 4 points, there's ways to accomplish that in a different path than this.
Point of order.
And so are we asking to
The
approve?
The C3 map is in the materials, so.
Right.
I mean, that's.
It
I
says
assume that's
C3,
what
and the
it is.
C3's in the materials.
That's what we're voting on, is to negotiate on the basis of that route, understanding if during negotiations, that could get tweaked. But, I mean, that's, yeah.
Are we able to ask a question?
I'm sorry, no.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions or any comments?
I do.
Rick?
So I think some of the concerns I heard tonight were with safety, in particular Pheasant Hill and Winnequa. And I'm wondering, as I understand it, Public Works has started to look at adding sidewalks to.
I have asked Public Works to begin exploring that.
Okay. So the time frame with that, would we have to wait till the next capital budget before we address that?
Sidewalks?
For sidewalks?
Well-
Or is it possible for us to move on that sooner?
Excuse me, if you'd like to have a conversation, could you please go out in the hall?
Sure,
Thank you. I'm sorry, Rick, what was your question?
Well, I'm just wondering what the possible timeline for adding sidewalks might be. And I think people would get some comfort from knowing that we're going to address it by A, B, or C.
I think, first of all, this wouldn't even be implemented till at least next fall, at the earliest, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
not something that's going to happen overnight. Mark, do you want to address the timeline? I think it would definitely have to be part of the capital budget.
Yeah.
It's possible we may be able to start some planning earlier.
Yeah. Well, as far as the implementing the service, we would negotiate this time we come back, probably, I don't know, February, March, and then they need 6 months from there, at least from there. So I'm assuming this is not going to start to at least the third quarter or maybe 2025.
Okay.
With that, and as far as that, and some of these bus stops are, if they're kind of in line where we're at right now, as far as if they're kind of part of the express route already, which some are, they'd be grandfathered in, so we don't need to do anything as of day one. We eventually would want, pads and all that eventually set up. It's not required by Metro because we'd be grandfathered in. As far as the sidewalks, and actually, if you're talking about sidewalks on Winnequa Road or something like that, we'd have to.
Winnequa and Pheasant Hill.
Oh, or Pheasant Hill.
Yeah.
Well, Pheasant Hill, you would have to do a budget amendment, kind of to start, the engineering of that, or maybe we can look hard, see if ARPA money could do the engineering of that. And also is eventually in a TIF, so it's something to think about too, because if it's in a TIF, then it's covered by the TIF. So there's, less impact on a taxpayer, be it the TIF would cover it, because it's within a half mile and things like that. If there's a TIF, I'm not saying that
Okay.
there is. If there is, I know there's been talk about it for 2 years at the bowling alley site area. So that, if you do a half mile, it'd be covered. But if you want to do it ahead of time, then yeah, you'd have to start the process. Winnequa Road, I think it'd be the same thing. You'd have to start, doing maybe, again, look at ARPA money or do a budget amendment, since we haven't borrowed the money yet, and start move that up. And then that would be more of a 25 expense if you're ready to actually put the sidewalks in. So,
But we could potentially start planning before
Yeah.
the 25 budget, if we could use,
Yeah.
I also wondered if we could
Right.
possibly use some of the remaining ARPA money at least to start planning.
ARPA would probably work, right, because it's tied to transportation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I'm
part
talking
of
to,
it's supposed to be
talking to our
infrastructure.
engineer, or not engineer, Brad Broom, who kind of asked, like, what would that actually, cost for engineering? He told me between 15 and 25,000. I don't know if that's an accurate number.
For which?
It's just engineering.
Oh,
So it's not like 100,000, it's 15 to 20, I mean, that's what he told me, based on what he thought the total cost of the projects would be
okay,
for that.
thank you.
And we could probably, if we have to, get that narrowed down even more,
Yeah,
one way or the other, if that's,
I think whatever we do, I think we just should communicate that to the public, because there seems to be a lot of concern
yeah.
in particular about that.
Yeah, and right now, there's only, granted, these are estimated stops, and I've just been
Yeah.
kind of working with them, and I know Transit Commission kind of saw last week, and Metro's is gonna fine tune some of these stops, but there's really one stop at the beginning of, say, Owen Road and Pheasant Hill, and one at the end of Nichols and Pheasant Hills. There's not gonna be one in between, so there's only gonna be that, so basically kind of one end, one at the other end, too. That- I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Should do for now.
Anyone else? Alder DeCula, then Alder Holmquist.
Mark, then by that, we could probably maybe tap into ARPA funds for the pads too, right? Because that
I
would,
think I have to look really into it, if
Hmm.
you can, but yeah, I mean, I have
okay.
details, but yeah. With that. And that would be another thing, like you said, I'd look into that. I can look into it, that's direction, and then it would be more or less for 25, because by the time you do it, you're gonna be, snow's gonna be coming, winter's coming.
Hmm.
So you're probably looking at, with concrete, you're probably looking at 25, you're spring up 25 or so for
Mhm.
pads.
Alder Holmquist, and then Alder Moore.
As it relates back to the C3 proposed route and what you just mentioned of one of the possibilities of stops for the Pheasant Hill section, one at the top and one at the bottom. One of my concerns, and I would say I overall support the resolution as a whole. However, I still have concerns, and I still appreciate the concerns that are being raised, particularly with those two segments, Pheasant Hill, Owen, and the Winnequa section. Having a stop at the top and a stop at the bottom, and I would say a difficult turn section, although I know Metro has come in through the Owen Road turn. I would say that bus had to take up at least the whole turn lane, if not the turn lane plus the first lane of traffic, because only one vehicle can fit in that turn lane right now to turn a left onto Owen. If there's going to only be a single stop, what would be the advantage of going there versus going up to Nichols and having a straight shot down Nichols and avoiding an Owen Pheasant Hill?
Well, on the road, you had people who live further south from there be able to use that stop.
Absolutely, just like 2 blocks before Owen, there's people
What,
the
so
same
you're
depth.
saying why, what would be the advantage of doing the Owen as opposed to going on Nichols?
Yeah.
You have a huge percentage of the senior population of Monona and Heritage, and
Which is
and
a half a
Monona
block
Hills.
off of the drive.
Right. But,
And so if the stop isn't going to be right at the drive, it's going to be up.
And seniors can also hop on the bus to be able to go to the church to vote, or to go to or anyone could go to vote, or to go to the food pantry. That was the thinking behind that.
Nancy, did you have, you had your hand raised?
I did have my hand raised, and now I've totally, oh, I know what I was going to say. I just want to, because Rick, since you're the newbie among us, just wanted to share that the last 2 sidewalks that we did here, it took 3 to 5 years. And it wasn't because of planning, it was because of community resistance to sidewalks. In some cases, so I just don't want to, I mean, you know, the good news is that the routes that we've chosen, the route that has been chosen, the C3 route as it currently exists, Pheasant Hill, and that stretch of Winnequa, and the small bit that's left on Owen, were all key areas as identified by our bike ped plan. So it would be consistent with the bike ped plan where we advocated for sidewalks, but I don't want to get any, I don't want, I'm a big believer in managing expectations, and I don't want people to think that we're going to have sidewalks on Winnequa in 6 months. It's just that's not, we just don't operate that quickly. Or 6 months after, even 6 months after we start service. And as I said earlier, I think there's some value in seeing how it goes. Seeing how it goes and seeing what the ridership looks like and seeing what Metro's experience is and resident experience is.
Anyone else? Alder Holmquist.
I have a question. The new development down at the White Horse property?
Yes.
In the current C3 route, doesn't appear as if it would be then serviceable to that large development?
It is. It's a walking distance, I guess.
There's not a crosswalk to cross Broadway? At the Menards intersection, there's not a crosswalk currently.
I'd have to drive. Is there not a crosswalk to the street light?
No.
That'd be something we have to look into.
I'm sure we can put one in.
I know that they initially were saying, Metro was initially saying that they didn't want to stop, but this is when we were doing one way, I think, that they didn't want to stop by the development, but they definitely talked about having a crosswalk or something so that people from the development could get on at Cops. But that was when it was a one-way rather than a two-way. So now they, so yes, it probably would have to be a crosswalk. Again, that's part of the PIP.
Come.
Anyone else? Comments, questions? Okay, well then hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Holmquist.
No.
Alder Moore.
Aye.
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Alder DePula.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to new business. Item 2A, consideration of resolution 23-12-2662. Purchase approval, Parks and Recreation. Folks, could you please take it out in the hall? We're recording this so people can't hear what we're saying. Parks and Recreation truck, put forth by the Park and Recreation Board, and this is started for immediate approval. Is there a motion? Is that order?
Move to suspend. Move to suspend. Out of order.
Jackson, is there? Let's see if there's a.
Can we have her try and speak?
Me?
Missy.
Missy?
You want Missy?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
Are we good? Okay. All right, this is, we have a motion and a second to take this out of order, is that correct? All
I
in
think
favor,
there was
say
a
aye.
motion.
I didn't hear a second.
Was there a second? We need a second.
I can second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Is there a motion to approve this?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Missy?
Sorry. Much appreciation for the original approval of the purchasing for the truck. So right now we're just looking to actually purchase with the funds that were already allocated at the capital budget project.
Did you want to explain anything about the truck or why we're doing it now and why it's start for immediate approval?
due to lead time, we are looking at getting immediate approval. We are looking to have this truck by summer if possible, and the sooner the lead time on purchasing, the quicker we can get it in our hands in our vicinity. We are already currently short vehicles as a staff, and we have one that is up for replacement, and this is needed sooner rather than later.
Any questions from SE? This is something that was approved in the capital budget. Alderwood.
Just a correction, I think it can just be a technical one. In the now therefore be it resolved, it refers to a Ford F-150 truck, and it's actually a Ford F-250, so a more heavy duty.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Moore.
Aye.
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Alder DePula.
Aye.
Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you. Item 2B, which is also started for immediate approval, or taking out of order, consideration of resolution 23-12-2661, creating tax increment district number 10, put forth by the Community Development Authority. Is there a motion to take this out of order?
Motion to take this out of order?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Can I speak for a minute before we vote?
We aren't voting on the resolution.
I know, I want to speak to whether or not we should take this out of order.
I think we have to because of the timing thing.
Well, I'd like to speak to that,
Oh,
Sure.
Okay,
right? I should have a right to.
sure.
Okay.
There's a first and a second.
It was the
I
first.
guess
No
you
reason it can't be.
I guess you can, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I'm new to the commission, and others on the commission have probably been here and heard more about tax increment 10. I haven't.
I'm sorry, Rick, what was that? I didn't quite hear what you said. What was that?
Other people have been on the
Oh.
council longer than I have and have probably heard a lot about TID 10. I have not.
Okay.
So this was my first real introduction to the subject. And the packet that Leah sent out afterwards at noon, I didn't have, access to that directly. I found it later online, so I learned a lot more about tax increment District 10. This is the first I'm hearing that there's a deadline that has to be met, and I understand that. I think it's a good proposal, but if I'm on the council and I don't know much about it, I have to think people in the community don't know much about it either. And it's a big ticket item. It's like $16 million. It's not part of our budget, so it's kind of off the books. But it's not our biggest TID, but it's still a lot of money. So I just think there should have been more that I would have had access and the public should have access to when it comes to things of this nature. So that's why I'm going to vote not to take it out of order. I suspect that it will still be taken out of order, so it's more of just a protest vote. But I just think something more has to be done to communicate this, not only to the council, but to people at large. So that's
Anyone
why I'm
else
going
have
to.
anything to say?
Sure.
Doug?
Well, we'll try. I appreciate you haven't been on the council, very long, but this has been discussed at numerous CDA meetings, and maybe the TID hasn't been here, although I think we've seen the maps, maybe not, but, this is basically, we're doing the TID number 10 for the project that everything else is already approved, so.
Yeah, I would say that there's a half block of storefronts over and above that I was surprised to learn about when I read the document.
We can discuss that when we're discussing.
I know, but I'm just saying in terms of the
next part.
information that I may have had access to, that was also kind of a surprise. There's a $3 million affordable housing initiative in here over and above the Bloom project, which is all to the good. I think it's a great idea. I just had no idea about it. So I think CDA is kind of it's a mystery. A lot of it's in closed meetings. It's not recorded. It's not on community media like the other committees. So again, it's just there isn't as much open information about it to the public. And like I said, if I'm on the council and this is a surprise to me, then I'm sure it's not likely to be well understood throughout the community. So I understand there's a deadline because the mayor just said so. I'm not quite sure why there wasn't more time allowed for the council to have a normal 2 looks at this. Maybe we'll talk about that when we look at the full proposal. So that's my say.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have anything to say? All right, all in favor of taking out of order, say aye.
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 Opposed?
I opposed.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve this?
Move to approve?
Second.
Doug?
Thank you, Mayor.
And maybe you could address some of Rick's questions.
Yes, absolutely. I'll start with that. Good evening, everybody. Certainly apologies for the administrative error that this was not included. That was not intentional by any means, and certainly once we realized, we worked to rectify that as soon as we could. So this has been to CDA for sort of a few workings at this point. The Joint Review Board has also reviewed this as well, and slight tweaks have been made, slight things have been recommended, but generally this document, I'd say, has sort of been in the public domain for the last 3 months or so, in sort of this fashion, with boundaries and things like that sort of being developed in a similar way. So certainly not the intention, and apologies for that, but hopefully this evening there's a chance to sort of address some questions as they come up. So as mentioned, this is the Tax Increment District number 10 project plan. This sort of outlines the details associated with the TID, with the Tax Increment District. This is specifically linked to the Bloom development that has just started the building demolition. That would be the 98 units at the block of West Dean, that entire block between Springhaven and West Dean. So the proposed district here also includes sort of half of the block, the storefronts as mentioned, extending north to Lofty, and the project plan concerns everything within a half-mile buffer going outside of that as well. Pleased to say we're joined by both Katrina Becker as well as Gary Becker online, who developed the plan, and at this point I'll kind of pass it over to them to run through this in a little more detail. Thanks.
Thanks. So, like Doug said, this, in terms of kind of timing, right before this, we had a public hearing on November 28th at the CDA meeting, and the resolution was adopted through the CDA. So, just to kind of walk through this a little bit, so Tax Increment District 10, it's 2 blocks, like Doug said, between Dean Ave and Lofty Ave, and it's the eastern half of the block between Springhaven and Lofty, and then the full block of Springhaven to Dean, as you can see up there. So in 2009, the city declared the area a blighted area, and so this is a blight elimination tax increment district. It's located within redevelopment area 10. As Doug mentioned, the city has a development agreement in place with a developer to construct multifamily housing on the southernmost block. And that would be 4-story mixed-use building, about 83 units, about 10 townhomes, parking. And then, the tax increment district will also fund improvements within a half-mile boundary of the TID. So some of those that are discussed in the plan are for stormwater improvements, and for pathways, parking, and pedestrian vehicular infrastructure. There's budget in there for developer incentives to the Bloom, or for the Bloom project. There's, let's see, about $2 million in the budget for site development costs, $2 million for land acquisition and assembly, which actually I'm double checking, that might have been an old version that we took out. No, that's still accurate. Yeah, and then there is added in there some funding for affordable housing and blight elimination fund over the life of the TID. So that ideally is to assist in identifying and really supporting projects that eliminate blight within a half mile of the tax increment district.
That's not a specific project, though.
No, it's just potential. A lot of things in the project plan are written in to kind of be included for future use or to be decided on for more specifics in the future. So.
But it's what would allow us to use some of the money from the TID for that purpose.
Exactly.
We have to call it out in the plan, or we can't do it.
Exactly.
The numbers don't necessarily relate.
Yeah, we don't have to, you don't have to kind of stick to those exact numbers. That's just kind of what's budgeted for the life of the TID.
And I would add to the affordable housing components that there was quite a lot of discussion at CDA about that as this was going into the plan. Not just building on the success of Renew Monona, which has been for some of the single-family properties here, but also considering some of the smaller multifamily projects that are here, some of the more existing buildings, and some improvements there to sort of help bring those maybe up to current codes and things like that. So sort of more modest improvements for, say, smaller landlords and some of the more affordable rental units as well. So I would say that this project plan is sort of broadening the scope there for some of the affordable units that we could have benefiting from this district.
And that would be administered by the CDA?
I believe so, yes. Okay. Details of that project certainly still to be figured out, but again, sort of laying the framework here that could be possible.
Sure.
And obviously, Doug, that's subject to a development agreement, correct? Most of those, likely any programs or projects would be subject to an agreement.
Yes.
That would need to go through CDA and then come to this body.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm sorry if we interrupted. Did you have anything more to add?
No.
Trina? No. Okay. Aldermore.
I just want to follow up on that, since it says 2 million is budgeted for site development. What we're saying is, again, we would not be spending that unless a development comes forward that makes sense in any other way.
Correct.
Right.
And could you explain a little bit about the timing? Is it, does this have to be approved by the end of the year? Or what is the?
So my understanding of this, and please jump in if I'm mistaken, so we have the Joint Review Board is considering this and needs to happen, that consideration needs to happen after council action on the resolution. And so that is scheduled for the 9th. So I believe there is the opportunity for a second read if the council wishes to do so, I believe at the January 2nd meeting. So there is some flexibility there. I think there was some uncertainty if that meeting would take place. Some of this was being formed, but I believe that is the case. And so we, at this point, notices planning to go out tomorrow for Joint Review Board, but if we need to, move things around, we can. But that would be sort of the final piece, and that's kind of the thing that dictates the timeline, I guess, would be the thing to say. So if the council would like, then there's an opportunity to have a second read, and I don't believe that would cause an issue.
Okay.
And I would also just add that we're, so the timeline to have this submitted to the Department of Revenue is just by the end of October for 2024 to have it be effective January 1st, 2024. So we're kind of, I think, maybe some kind of the condensed timeline is because of the Joint Review Board meeting, but also potentially with construction wanting to be started on the project, kind of getting that moving, and having the TID established prior to that.
And the developer has some.
The end of year was tied to the development agreement.
Restrictions as to when they have to do certain things.
Yes,
correct?
That's correct. And that's sort of separate but adjacent to this. So.
Any other questions? Alder Wood and then Alder Bernstein.
Just more of a comment on page 34 of the attachment, I think the one that Leah sent out today. There's a map of the half-mile radius within which we can expend TIF funds. And you'll notice that that does go all the way up to the north end of San Damiano. So there may be some of the infrastructure, I think some of the pathways, maybe or maybe not parking lot. Those are two main, and possibly stormwater improvements if we chose to do that. Anyway, the point is that some of those will be able to be paid by TIF.
Because we can only use TIF funding for TID eligible expenses, correct?
Right,
We
and I
can't.
think there are some restrictions on what you can spend it on in parks, right? You can't,
Yeah,
you
there are
can't pay for some shelter, for example, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
It's a little more infrastructure related, I believe,
Yeah.
rather than capital type costs.
Right.
So I think it's sort of in the ground, on the ground, rather than above. It's kind of at least how I interpret that.
For instance, Rick, one thing we did, that's how we paid for the sidewalk on South Winnequa, was using TIF money from TID 9, which is the current development, because that was within half mile, yeah. And did you have you raised your hand?
Yeah, the affordable housing initiative, absolutely pleased, had no idea this was happening, but I'm very pleased with it. I think it's a wonderful idea. I just wondered, how did that number come about? Where did the negotiation start and end with that?
So I think some of that was sort of backed in from the sort of total amount that the district could potentially support. And I think just looking at some of the priorities there, and one of the things that the consultants asked of city staff was really any infrastructure projects or anything that's in that area already in capital planning and things like that. So public works, what is being looked at, especially what may be accelerated with additional folks living in this area, things like that, with the new apartments going in. So I think it was sort of a balancing between those, but just really looking at some of the units that are there, recognizing that not everybody may take us up on those as either, but just trying to balance and I think sort of allocate those out proportionately, I would say. So I think that one is a very particular number, but I think it sort of caught the end of the amount as well. So it's not a specific, there's not bids associated with it or anything like that, but it sort of rounded out the total, I guess.
Okay.
I think is why it's such a specific number.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, if there are no further questions or comments, will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Alder DePula.
Aye.
Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
Alder Moore.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item, 2C, consideration of ordinance 12-23-771, amending chapters 175 and 480 of the Code of Ordinances regarding in-ground swimming pools in the shore yard, put forth by the Plan Commission.
Thank you. Change of pace, but
Now let's go lie on the beach.
hard to think about swimming pools at the moment, but we have proposed ordinance changes here, both to the building section as well as the zoning code. This is really comes about from an increased number of variance requests for in-ground pools within the shore yard. And as the ordinance is currently written, they're only allowed in the rear and the side yards of properties and actually prohibited in shore yards. So that led to the need for variances, and it was sort of a question that was asked of staff to look into this, look at adjacent communities with very similar characteristics, sort of physical characteristics, and to bring that to Plan Commission with a recommendation. So the existing standards that we have within the ordinance are outlined in the staff memo that's included. And just one thing to point out, that there are a few certainly existing pools that have been able to be reconstructed. They are eligible for grandfathered status, if they retain their shape and location or become smaller, but any sort of enlargement of those, they would be subject to these new ordinances, which would make it difficult or impossible without the variance to construct. And so that has really been the case, that we've seen some redevelopment in some of these properties, and it's just not practical for them to relocate, and subsequently have requested those variances. Additionally, the accessory structures exclusion from the total area as well has been challenging. They're subject, the zoning code has 1,000 square feet total for all accessory structures on the property. That would include detached garages, sheds, boathouses, as well as swimming pools. And that 1,000 square feet is consistent across all properties and not scaled based upon lot size or anything like that. So that's another part that's being considered this evening for change. One thing that I will note is that even with these changes, it would still be subject to the lot coverage standards, which are 40%, 40, and that is for all structures, all buildings and structures across the lot, as well as the impervious calculations, which do scale based upon the size of the lot. So kind of a lot of details included in there, but I'll sort of be running through here the proposed changes. So you will see in the staff memo dated December 13th, you will see some of the details sort of from the adjacent communities. Each of them is a little bit different, but generally, you know, they do allow those swimming pools within the shore yard. And Monona was a little bit of an outlier not to include that. In discussion with a couple of the Plan Commission members as I was working through this, I think a lot of that just owes to the ordinance itself as it came through. It was not necessarily, I think it was a little more off the shelf than it was custom made. And so it was really an oversight, was sort of how it was expressed to me. So I wanted to look at, you know, what the adjacent communities were doing and how we could remain consistent. But one of the things that was important to me as I was proposing these changes was that I don't try and rewrite the code. Rather, we look at how can this work within the existing layout, the existing setup of the ordinance. So with that, I'll just kind of run through the proposed changes specifically to the zoning section. And this would be for both the single and the two-family sections. So very similar with the shore yard, with what it is allowed and then what is not. You will see in red that the proposal here is that in-ground swimming pools, at least 25 feet back from the ordinary high water mark, clear of the regulated floodplain, be permitted. The high water mark here is more of a consistent measurement that we can use that sort of establishes the shoreline effectively and make sure they're 25 feet back. So thinking there about the reason for this, keeping it away from the lake, giving a little bit of a buffer there, whilst also, you know, recognizing that there's probably a finite amount of space in the backyard, in the shore yard to work with. It does differ a little bit from the meander line that we typically use within the city, but the meander line is more consistent with adjacent, or I'm sorry, high water mark is more consistent with adjacent communities, and that was what was proposed here. Also easier to identify, easier to sort of conceptualize when you're on the site. A couple other elements that I included within the proposal, elements such as slides, diving boards, as well as the pool houses be prohibited. So when the ZBA was considering this, and putting conditions with their approvals, which they're entitled to do, typically they were concerned about cross views. You know, how impactful are these? Does the pool come with a pool house or additional slides, things like that may impact views across the lake from neighboring properties? And so that was included here for consistency, that this really be as minimally invasive above ground as possible. The Plan Commission did recommend including the diving boards with no more than 2 feet of height, recognizing that you may want to put those in, but again, they're still pretty minimal, probably no different than the ladder that may be in to get out of the pool. Finally, it was suggested at Plan Commission that the fencing be put in as well here, that fencing that substantially blocks neighbors' view may be subject to Plan Commission review. So just kind of a good check there. Typically, we will see sort of the traditional, black aluminum fence sort of as a safety measure. that's got a good amount of permeability, but, you know, if somebody were looking to put up a wooden fence with the cross-view impacts, Planning Commission would take a look at that, probably work with them to find something else that was a little more appropriate. So that's the proposal for the shore yard. Next piece would be that the in-ground pools are exempt from the lot coverage requirements. Again, the thinking there being that these are below grade, not above the ground, and you know, that's really reasonable. And again, there would be other checks and balances that would protect that. Moving on to 175, that is the building section of the ordinance. It's outside of the purview of the Plan Commission, but really these changes that I put before the council this evening, they're really consistency edits to make sure that the 175 is consistent with the zoning section. So the first one is for fences and hedges. Typically, fences are only allowed to be 42 inches in the shore yard. Fences for pools need to be 48 inches for safety. So it's a consistency there that we would allow, the proposal here would allow 48 inches when directly surrounding an in-ground swimming pool for safety. And again, the section specifically regulating swimming pools, 175, section 25, just adding shore yard in there as well. Again, just for consistency, it talks about where they are allowed, and it would just be aligning with zoning. So this was unanimously recommended by Plan Commission last week, that City Council consider this, and that's the proposal you see this evening. Thank you.
Any questions for Doug? I know I've had at least one fairly new resident has reached out to me with concerns about this. Alderman Bush.
Sorry, Doug, can you speak to the fence issue? It seems pretty subjective right now, because if anybody wanted to put a fence in a shore yard right now, and it was 42 inches, and let's just start with the simple, could that be a solid cedar fence?
Yes.
How will we determine if something is, any fencing that substantially blocks neighbor's view may be subject, like, there's a lot of like subjectivity in who's looking at that, and how are they making a determination of applicant A, we don't like your solid cedar 48-inch fence. Applicant B, sure, we like your 48-inch solid cedar fence.
I think it really sort of piggybacks with the building section with the proposals here. So it's 48 inches when directly surrounding an in-ground swimming pool. So I think the subjectivity would be the relation to the pool. That, let's say the pool's 10 feet in and this is for 48-inch fence on the property line. I would argue that that is not related to the pool, is not really a safety measure, and would be subject to the 42 inches. Typical measurement. Really, and I will say generally we see more, the fence standard can be bypassed if there is a cover on the pool of a certain strength and durability. And so typically we see plenty of those where they'll come in with the cover instead of the fence, just for aesthetics anyway. I think the commission generally looked for some leniency there in the ordinance as well in 480, that it'd be at staff's discretion, but with Plan Commission as kind of the review body. There was discussion there of ZBA or some other entity where maybe the burden would be higher, but I think the Plan Commission, it was decided that's where a notice could probably be sent to the adjacent neighbors. There's more of a discussion, it's a little more collaborative, and of course the burden, it's not a hardship that would be necessary, say, at ZBA. So I think really it's begins with staff review in terms of what's the intent of this. If it is really for screening or if it's for safety. I think really the focus of the 48 inches is for safety primarily, and that across the whole ordinance here was a focus. I know pretty recent, just before my time, but recently the pool ordinance was changed with input from PD as well as planning and I think a couple other departments. So focusing on safety was important. So I think the 48 inches, we did discuss as we have a ZBA about sort of percentage of transparency on the fence or something like that. But the preference was to go with this, that it'd be a little more discretionary.
Yeah, the last sentence is the part that is still somewhat concerning to me, of the additional any fencing that substantially blocks neighbors' views. Like, if the primary goal here is around safety and the requirements to 48 anyways, like, and I'll leave that for now. The discussion around pool house, was there discussion about what all, like, I don't own a pool, so I have no idea what all goes into this, but I know that there are like pumps and a variety of other pieces of equipment, and if I read this correctly, like, you can have all that stuff, it's just gotta be enclosed, less than 2 feet high, but then does that count as a part of your auxiliary structures, which we don't allow?
So I think there's a couple options here. Boathouses are permitted depending on the proximity to that. That's an option. I would say the pools that I have seen, similar to sort of air conditioning units and things, I've often seen them located, some of the mechanicals located actually away from the pool, maybe along the side yard. I'm thinking of some of the narrower lakefront lots where, within the side yard buffer, they may put some of those things, some of the mechanicals, some of those things. And I have seen that as well. So I think the thinking here was really the sort of additional elements that may come with the pool would not be permitted by right. Certainly if they were to request a variance, they still have the possibility to do that. They'd of course be subject to the standards of that. But I think really the 2 feet was much more about specifically about the diving boards, not about anything else. The intent really was everything at grade or below, the ladder to get out if need be, obviously, as well as the diving board, and then the fence really being it. So just to be minimally invasive, rather than additional elements as well within that shortcut.
And so, for example, other mechanicals that would be there, if it's not a permanent structure, wouldn't be considered an auxiliary structure then? It would just be mechanicals in that we don't regulate.
They're not subject to setback standards, so we do typically see those in, let's say,
the encroachment on the 7 feet. Okay.
And we do certainly encourage them to be screened. The commercial standards would be screened in a style similar, but a lot of times we'll see arborvitae and things around those,
sure,
to offer that soft buffer.
Okay.
Anyone else? And Doug will be back at the next meeting if anything else comes up. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
One final item, 2D, consideration of Resolution 23-12-2663, amending the 2023 capital budget for library fireplace replacement put forth by the library board.
The director is available.
Yeah, library director is on the screen. Ryan, do you want to do a little explanation?
Sure. So last year's for the capital budget, one of the library's projects was we were looking at replacing one or both of the corner signs that we have, and then looking to focus on the sign that is on the corner of Nichols and Schluter. And I was unsuccessful over the course of between April and now, trying to have a sign company come out and take a look at it. But in that process, near the back end of it, talking with Brad Bruin, that actually there's an upcoming project there where they're going to be reconfiguring that intersection, and they're not sure if actually where the current sign is will be affected by that. And I believe the design process for that is in 2024. So after that process, we'll be able to identify if where the current sign is will be impacted by the change. And if it is, then of course we would move the sign and then maybe replace it at that point. I'm not sure, but it would be maybe not the best idea to put in a brand new sign there if it then would need to move. Meanwhile, I wouldn't say luckily, but we have the fireplace in our quiet reading room. The fan broke in the fireplace, so it cannot displace the heat that the gas fireplace is producing. So not only is it not as convenient, say, for patrons who enjoy sitting by the fireplace and feeling that heat, especially as it gets colder, but it makes it relatively unsafe to keep that gas fireplace running throughout the day, because there's really nowhere for the heat to go as it's designed. And that fireplace is over 20 years old, and that fan part that is broke, they no longer make anymore. So the library was looking at how we were going to get a new fireplace, and maybe waiting like throughout the year for the next capital budget. And then after talking with Brad about the issue with the intersection and the sign, hoping that we can take some of the funds that was obligated for that sign, and instead of doing the sign project this year, we would then move a portion of that over to replace the fireplace at the library.
Questions? Ryan?
Yeah, the 23 capital budget for the signs of the 25,000, that if the plan is not to replace those signs in 23, it hasn't been historically something that we would just necessarily move. Has it been budgeted? I mean, has it been borrowed?
I think it has been borrowed, but it wasn't spent. We thought it was going to happen this year, and it didn't.
Okay.
So I think it was part of the, you may know different, but I think it was part of the capital borrowing last spring.
I believe that's correct. Ryan was nodding, so I believe he agrees with that, so.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Okay, because there have been other smaller items such as this where Mark has said we haven't borrowed for it. And
I'm
therefore,
sure the fact that Mark agreed to this already means that the money must be available, I'm assuming.
That is my
But we
understanding.
can certainly double check with him.
Okay, yeah, that would be good to know. And is the plan then to use, if it were borrowed, for example, the additional 11 that would be left?
Yeah, because the fireplace is quoted at 14, and the project was budgeted at 25, so 11 remaining.
And would that be to then still go towards one or both of the signs?
I mean, I'm in a position that I'm not familiar with, to be quite honest, so I'm not sure if that 11 would roll over into 2024, but then it would almost have to roll over into 2025, because at this point in time, we'd have to wait for the 2024 design project to be completed to know if that sign is going to be, or that place is going to have some kind of impact based on that design study. And so I frankly don't know if then it's in the city's best interest to continue rolling over that 11,000 or to apply it to any overages of other projects. That I guess would be something I would plan to talk with Mark and Neil about. Right now, it's more so the use of the 14,000 for the fireplace. That's my main priority, because I don't see the 11,000 being used for the library this year.
Neil, would you like to address that?
Yeah, I think, Alder, I would agree with that just because of the dollar figure. I think that probably would ask the finance director if there's another project that could be allocated to offset some costs. And then just re-budget for that, and then in 25.
Yeah, because if I remember Ryan correctly, like when you first went out for signs, like they were coming back out of this world cost-wise.
Yeah, and the estimates I've received have been quite the range, and I'm admittedly frustrated by the process, mainly myself. I don't frankly know how I've been blown off by like 4 different companies and haven't been able to get that solid new estimate. But I don't believe that 11,000 would be adequate to replace the sign, especially if we move down the road of potentially having an electronic sign replacing the current sign that's there. That for sure would, 11,000 would not cover it.
All right. Thank
Any
you.
other questions? Rick?
Ryan, I know you got one bid But did you get more than that? Or are you going, this estimate based on one bid?
For the fireplace?
Yeah.
Yeah. For the
Yes,
fireplace.
we did get another bid, with going with the gas, and that was higher than the electric.
So you got a second bid for the electric or just the gas?
Just for gas.
Because I would really urge you to get more than one bid for the electric. I think,
Okay.
from what I've heard from other people,
See if we
that's,
can get another bid.
yeah, because I think that that's a lot for an electric heater, from what I've heard. So I think just
Okay.
this,
I can get the bid and see if, for everything that the 14,000 is covering, which is the fireplace itself, I believe, a simple facade around the fireplace.
Right.
And then all of the labor, both in installation, but also capping the gas and whatnot. So I can try to get another bid quickly and see if, if there's a better deal than 14,000.
yeah. And also, on the sixth whereas, staff estimates the cost of the electric fireplace, masonry, and elector. I want to know, is that a fake or a real elector?
Well, I don't dabble in either, so I would chalk that up to.
Well,
what
what is an elector when it comes to a fireplace, electric fireplace?
And frankly, I don't know, and maybe we could learn about that together.
Okay.
But in the meantime, I'm gonna guess that's a typo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think we can have a corrected version for the next meeting.
Okay.
Yes. I will quick add to, Alderwood pointed out, something that, myself and the public have pointed out in the past, that our current sign on that corner, which was, purchased with a donation from the Gregory family, some of the letters are falling off. So during this, and I elected not to replace them immediately in anticipating of changing out the sign, but since I'm going to assume that sign's going to be there for a while, I'm going to move forward and getting those letters replaced as soon as I can.
That would be good. Anyone else? Okay, well, this will come back at our next meeting. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Moving on to reports of committees, commissions, et cetera. Any updates or discussion on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts? None?
I mean, we passed a bus.
Pardon?
We passed the Metro
We passed the
recommendation.
bus, yeah, I guess that's
a biggie.
Any updates or discussion on sustainability efforts?
We passed the bus.
All right. Moving on to committee reports, Alder DePula.
I don't have anything to report, but I did want to just express my gratitude and thanks to Nancy for the incredible amount of work done with all of the effort having to do with the last 2.5 years of what's been going on the Transit Commission, along with every other member of the Transit Commission. Really, it was a staggering amount of work and a lot of effort trying to communicate a difficult subject to the public. And I feel that there's always room for improvement, but there's very little, I think, in this regard. I think it was pretty well thought out, well detailed, and great efforts were made to be as inclusive as possible. So thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Alder Holmquist.
No report.
Alder Moore.
Nothing to report.
Alder Wood.
No report. Happy holidays.
Yeah. Alder Bernstein.
I'll just mention that sustainability, we talked a lot about salt and trying to minimize its application on the streets, driveways, sidewalks of Monona. It's become an increasing problem for other cities. I know with Madison, I've heard a couple of their wells have been, this salt has become a real problem, and they're having to deal with that in terms of their municipal freshwater wells. I also know it's can be a real issue when it comes to concrete, especially new concrete, can crack that up. So there's some real public nuisance issues with salt. It's not just because it has some mild pollution effects. So one of the things the committee has started to talk about or just learned about is that the city of Madison passed an ordinance that people not only have to shovel their sidewalks, they have to use a reasonable amount of salt on their sidewalks and driveways and sweep up any unused salt. I can't say it's working very well. I was walking on State Street and there was salt up and down the street there that wasn't serving any purpose that I could see. It would be regulated by the housing inspector, so that would probably have to be a consideration if Monona was to do something similar. But we are looking at the possibility of making some level of recommendation in that regard. So
That's interesting. And I-
Thank you.
Aren't we already a Salt-wise?
Yeah, we are Salt-wise.
Yeah.
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 Like,
But you're trying to curb personal behavior. as
I'm
opposed
talking
to
about an
municipal.
ordinance.
yeah.
Right.
Private property.
For private property. yeah.
Right, private property as opposed to public, because we're already a salt-wise community, which is to say, our government, we, as the government and public works, already do a stellar job. They've all gone through training to be a salt-wise community.
But this would be more of the
Right,
private, yeah.
right, yeah.
Can't wait to explain to my insurance company that concept. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Explain in what way?
Oh,
Just joking.
I'm joking in a just a, obviously I think it's important, but I'm just, insurance companies are always lag behind such things like that, you know, like my business insurance would be like, someone slipped on your sidewalk. I'm like, well, the inspector said there was too much salt. Well, it's still your responsibility. You need
Oh,
to
I
clear
see
the
what
salt,
you're saying.
you know what I mean?
Okay.
So, something to think about while
Well,
you're doing
no,
it.
I'm sure a lot of people put salt because they're afraid of liability.
Mhm.
But I think there's reasonable applications that are effective as much as just dumping a whole cup in one place.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
City clerk.
Candidate packets still available in my office. Paperwork is due January 2nd at 5 p.m. Current alders that are not running should turn in their declaration of non-candidacy by Friday at 5 p.m. Otherwise, paperwork's due January 2nd. That's it.
City administrator.
I have one important message to send. I'll share it on the screen here. The Chiefs asked me to remind everybody that they will be sending Santa off pre-holiday before he does his thing this coming Thursday at December 21st at 4 p.m. So come out and see Santa off on his way. Here's the route that he's going to be coming through town. They'll be escorting him as he stops through Monona before he gets on to his major work for the weekend.
Is that the C3 route?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Is that the C3 route? Yeah.
It's similar. I'm not sure if he's going to take the bus or not, if he can do it, but he probably would if he could. So yeah, please come on out and stop out and say hi to Santa this Thursday. Nothing else.
I just had a couple things. We had hoped not to have a meeting on January 2nd, but obviously the way things have happened, and we've got a couple of other things we want to bring up. Did we still want to see about how people felt about January 2nd or if January 3rd was an option? I noticed there's not going to be a Public Works meeting on January 3rd. I just didn't know if people were going to be out of town or anything, if January 2nd was an issue for anyone.
I have an MPO on the 3rd.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I may be out of town, but I'm going down to Chicago for New Year's, but I don't know my exact schedule yet.
Okay.
But if I'm here. Oh.
So everyone
If I
else
come
thinks they
back.
can make January 2nd? Is that?
Is that
Might be a bit of a problem for me, because I think the first day we're gonna, yeah, it might be a bit of a problem for me on the 2nd.
We can certainly follow up with some official
Yeah, maybe
requests for
follow up
everybody,
with
see what schedules would
an
be.
email and doodle.
Just
make sure we have-
waiting, yeah, we're unfortunately, we just feel in a position, we don't feel we can wait until the second meeting in January for some of the issues that are coming up, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so there was that. And then Doug Plowman and Thor Jepson, the planner and assistant planner, and I were invited to tour Simpson Street Free Press a week ago. And, you know, I've known about them for years and had somewhat of an idea of what they did, but it's a really cool organization. We had a really good meeting with them and with some of the staff. We met some of the students who work there, and they really do a lot of good things, and I'm sure most people in Monona have no idea everything that's involved there. There's a whole literacy end to things, and teaching writing, and they've had kids as young as second grade, all the way up through high school involved, and coming back from college, and that kind of thing. So it was a very impressive tour, I thought. And then the only other thing I had to say was just have a nice holiday, everybody, and we'll come back and start all over.
The
Brian.
city staff Christmas, or
Oh,
holiday
right.
luncheon is Wednesday?
Wednesday?
That's right, Wednesday.
Across the street, so.
Mm.
I think starting at 11:45.
Hmm?
Tomorrow?
That's for us, not for the public.
Right.
Yes. No, it's Wednesday. It's the day after tomorrow. Today's Monday.
Yes.
I think Leah sent out an invitation to everyone
Yeah.
last week. Okay, well then, I guess the only other thing we have, this is the time of year when we reappoint all the election or inspectors, chief election inspectors, and special voting deputies, and you have a list of all those people. Is there a motion to approve those appointments?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. So Lean, you can start planning your election. Thank you.
Move adjournment?
Yeah, oh yes. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. It's been a long year.